Welcome to Sustainable Success. If you are a first-time visitor here, welcome to our platform now on Lisbon. We've been here now for almost a year. It's hard to believe that we've been on this new platform from 1 year, moving from live radio to this format back in January of 2025. Again, welcome. Again, you could also follow us here on Spotify, Apple, and also YouTube, our audio version. And of course, our Facebook page at Sustainable Success 2017. There, we've had many of our great guests sharing their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate you and your business success to the next level. If you'd like to see content on a future show that we have not covered, feel free to reach out to our team here at chris@sustainablesuccess.net. That's chris@sustainablesuccess.net. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, it is a membership program taking out all the noise out of social media. You get to generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact with. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got an exciting show today. I am so excited, especially when the name of our radio show is in the title. Yes, Sustainable Success starts in the first 90 days. And yeah, those first 90 days are critical when it comes to success in any type of endeavor. And today we're going to be hearing a message, from two leading experts in this particular area that are going to be sharing their insights on helping you, no matter where you are, whether if it is your first 90 days or maybe you have another reset to, take those first 90 days and kind of reset things to move your business forward, no matter how big your organization is. Today, we're going to be talking with Neill Marshall. He's the chairman and co-founder of HealthSearch Partners, architect of the First 90 Days Leadership Series. And we also have Kurt Mosley, Association's practice leader, HealthSearch Partners. He's also a national speaker and healthcare strategy expert. And we are so excited to have both gentlemen here today. And without further ado, we welcome Neill Marshall and Kurt Mosley to the show. Hello, guys.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you.
Good to
Hey,
have you
Chris.
here.
Very nice meeting you.
Good to meet you guys. Pleasure to be here. So, I'd like to, we always like to start off with the, the back story of success, maybe, coming from your perspective. If you can kind of share with our listeners, those listening later, your perspective, your experience when it comes to building success as a foundation in those first 90 days of whatever leadership role there is.
Well, Chris, I think, people say, how did you create it? Was it, an epiphany, if you will? But we kind of stumbled into it. We interviewed a hospital CEO, Richard Parks, who is transferred in to a hospital in Lubbock, Texas, and in his first 90 days, and he was talking to us about his experience, and he said, "Yeah, when I got there, I spent 24/7 at the hospital." And I said, "Yeah, we all work hard. I'm sure you're there all the time." He says, "No, you don't understand." He goes, "I was in the hospital." He left his family back
Wow.
at their original residence while he transitioned. And in the first 30 days, he slept in the resident lounge every night. So again, the first day he woke up, and as people, our age do, he said, somebody said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm the new CEO." And one of the doctors said, "Oh, that's good." He said, he goes, "How'd you sleep?" And the doctor said, "It stunk. These mattresses are horrible." So he said, "I can fix that." So he called the materials manager, right, first day one, and they got a couple pickup trucks, went to Costco and bought mattresses. And from day one, everybody remembered what he did. He showed that, I can fix things. I can fix them now to make my doctors happy, which are, obviously key in patient delivery in that hospital. So we thought that's really significant. I wonder what other CEOs have done in their first 90 days that have helped them be successful, or, missteps, if you will, that stumped them. So we started doing our research, and we've talked over, in Neill and I's career, over 10,000 industry leaders. And we started doing our research, and we kept hearing that the first 90 days weren't just about getting their footing. They set the tone for their success for their whole career. And that's why we launched the 90-day series. And there are a series of articles that are related to those, and really to capture the stories and give future leaders a playbook on what to do in the first 90 days.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And that's a lot of executives and leaders there to interview. I mean, I'm sure there's some common ground with personality, but yet diverse group of different personalities and perhaps generational types getting their insights and experiences. What would you say, what is a common trait of someone that's committed to success? What you described, Kurt, with that example, like what is that, maybe that one common trait that you find like when you talk to these 10,000 plus leaders?
Well, I think, especially relating back to the 9 Day series, Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's called
Yep.
What Got You Here, Will Get You There.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these leaders get appointed these new roles. They may have been a CEO in a hospital for 20 years, 15 years. They get to a new role and they realize what they did in the past is not going to get them to where they are in the future. So they've adapted. And I think a lot of it is the goal is not to show competence, but to identify you can change and become part of this new role, adapting to the culture of the hospital, adapting to the new surroundings, adapting to a different environment. So I think that's one of the keys.
Yeah.
And I think one of the traits that our CEOs told us just doesn't work is coming in and trying to act too quickly. John Wooden said it the best, famous basketball coach from UCLA. He said, "Be quick, but don't hurry." We see a lot of our CEOs go in. I got to do something my first 90 days. I have to accomplish something. I want people to see what I do, but without listening first, they hurry into it. They hurry into a situation that they can't get out of. So.
They get over their heads with, yeah. And you pointed out a really like a word a few times that stood out for me. It's a word that, it's been kind of a little bit of a buzzword the last year or two, or probably even maybe a little more, but it's so true and so important when it comes to success. I heard you say adaptability, those types of words. Can you maybe share some insights why adaptability, why that's so important as well?
Well, I think you have to, when you're coming into a new uh, role, if you will, and you have to adapt to what the role that's there. And my father said this quote, and I've used it my whole life. He said, "It's hard to talk your way out of something you behaved yourself into." So, and a lot of times our leaders, if they don't adapt at the start, they walk in and they have grand plans. They issue memos, put up signposts, if you will, but their behavior doesn't match that. You know the way that they're
Contradicts it. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
and people look at leaders. People don't look at what a leader says; they look at what a leader does. Like for example, one of our Neill's first boss, Grover Martin, it was a sales job I think Neill had, and first day they're waiting for the new CEO to come in, and they're all standing up front, and they're waiting and waiting, and he shows up, and he gets out of his car, walks the parking lot, starts picking up trash from day one, walks into the office, and everybody was standing around, and the phone rang, and he reached over and he said, "Grover Martin, pick up the phone." So he set that example from day one and said, "Listen, I'm here to help, but I'm here to adapt, and here's what my role is going to be." And he set the tone for what the rest of his career was going to be. And I think Neill was telling me the story. He said after that, nobody let a phone go unanswered for one ring. So
Well, you talked about like sometimes like certain things may not align with, like you said something about behavior, and I'm always a big thing like sometimes like if like the early, especially in those first 90 days, if certain things are not in alignment, like if you say something and then your behavior doesn't align with what was said, or in the tone that it was said, or your body language, whatever that may be, can you talk about like what were some of those early visible behaviors that are so important to establish credibility moving forward?
well, I remember one of our interviews uh, with Jim Decker, and he wrote a great book. It was called Reviving the Heart of Leadership. He was the CEO, and he talked about the 20-50-25 rule. And I said, "Oh, what's that got to be? It's got to be something great." And he said, "Well, knowing when I come into my role, a quarter of the people will be there from day one, will be on your side. Half are on the fence, and 25% are never going to be on your side. He said, and it's not that he didn't want to pay attention to the bottom 25%. He said, but I couldn't waste my time on it. And he he told us great stories about what was successful, what wasn't. He came in from day one, and I think it was first meeting, and he thought I'll be a hero, and he brought in I think it was Dunkin' Donuts, and put it on the table, looked around, everybody kind of frowned on their face. Little did he know, for 20 years they'd been using a local bakery for their donuts for every Monday morning meeting. So he said, he told me after that, he goes, Kurt, never don't take advantage of a good crisis. And he turned it around. The next day he showed up with the right donuts, and it was just it was a good story about what he adapted and what he lived in that new environment. So
Yeah. Yeah, like you say, because you're never going to be everything for everyone, anyway, or maybe not at the same time. It takes time, and sometimes I guess you can't force something that's not meant to be forced at that
no.
point, and that's so important. Yeah. So what would when I guess like in the 90 days, what would be some other things that would be important to establish that foundation of leadership? In terms of getting people on board, getting people engaged, getting people that as they get plugged in to step into those role and duties that are going to help as a now together interdependently start raising the bar in any kind of business or organization.
I guess that's a good question. I think, besides the normal getting to know the coworkers, interviewing everybody, walking the floor, especially in the hospitals, um, seeing all the different people from, the physicians down to maintenance, understanding
Mm,
what they do, walk in their shoes, if you will, but also forging external relationships, I think is really key in the first 90 days. And it could be in healthcare, it could be anything else. And what I mean by that is, no healthcare leader operates in a vacuum. They really don't. And the success depends on physicians, but also community leaders, regulators, donors, board chairs, leaders that get outside of the four walls, meet with the mayors, the local religious affiliations, uh, really establishes invaluable perspective and credibility within their community. So they gain acceptance because they're part of the community, and as we all know, we're all going to be patients someday if we already aren't. So
yeah.
they get to know that, and people know them, and it built community trust even before they launched their first initiative and said how we're going to relate to this community. So there was a book out there, I forget the author, but it was called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. So establish those relationships before you need them. So you don't have to say I need a favor from you now. If you need something, somebody will be there. You did a favor for me, and I'll be there for you when you need me.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to, I guess with that, what you said you have to build we have to build rapport, and there's got to be a level of trust if someone's going to buy in to do something. Like when you do need something and you come to that person or that group of people that they want to feel like, they feel valued. They want to feel like they've been understood and that you understand, or in this case, can relate to, their role, their duties, and so on, and be able to articulate that. Can you also share, communication is oftentimes something that is overlooked. Everyone just assumes and speculates, that we all know what each other is wants and what we're looking to do. But in reality, that's usually not the case. This is why expectations fall through the cracks. This is why we have finger pointing and that type of thing. Can you talk about like even especially in the first 90 days, how important communication is, whether if it's verbal in writing, whatever, any form of it, why it's so important.
Well, I mean, obviously, besides the face-to-face meetings, which you mentioned, and getting to know people intimately, group settings, that's important. But the stories that we had in our first 90-day series, they're really not about these bold strategies or plans or somebody saying, I'm the communication master. They're really about symbolic actions. And I think that's communication also. So things like, sleeping at the hospital, walking the parking lot at the dawn, set presence, showing, showing up with your family every Christmas, which one of our Wayne Sensor did, is one of our CEOs we interviewed, and every Christmas they toured the hospital and communicated with everybody, and his children handed out candy canes. And it got to be where everybody expected it. And they said, he communicates without even talking to us. We know how he feels. And one year they couldn't do it because of a family issue, and it was missed. They were like, why weren't you here on Christmas? So it's something that they look forward to. So communication takes all different forms. It really does. And it's your actions. It's how you look at people. And at the same time, it's how you follow up. If you are issuing a statement, a memo, a guideline, if you follow up with it, and if you know, you walk the walk when you talk the talk.
Now, in today's world of artificial intelligence with AI, we have no excuse why we can't follow up in
Right.
in written format. We could have AI, record that and simplify it, which is great nowadays, and so on. I know we're going to be going to break in a little over 2 minutes. And before we dive into some of the things we want to talk about in the second segment, is there any other critical areas that are important in the first 90 days in terms of either establishing sound leadership, or if you're revamping, the culture of your organization to something that is going to move things forward?
Well, I mean, you mentioned culture. I mean, I think it's really important that you understand the culture before you
Yeah.
try to see if you're a fit or how you fit in, or if somebody says we have to create a different corporate culture here, you have to understand what the culture is before you start. You have to have a baseline, if you will. So I think that's very important. And then really understand that that first 90 days, you're in a learning mode. There's pressure for you to accomplish things, and the board has their expectations, but you really need, like I said, don't need to be repetitive, but be quick, but don't hurry. Understand what's going on before you make your first move. Understand the playing field, understand the players.
Yeah, well, and I said, and I love what you said, like understand the players. Like I've always been a big advocate. You have to know your people. You have to know your audience. It's like your people, and then whoever you're serving, you have to know them. And I'm not saying you have to be buddy buddy, but you have to know how they process things. And not everybody processes information the same. So when we can pick up on certain things and that can improve that communication process, it definitely helps to build that rapport and trust that you were talking about earlier, because that's so
Yeah.
important. And
Many, go ahead. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, keep going.
Many of our leaders have told us that, when you are the CEO, he said you're on stage all the time and you can't forget it. I mean, it's like it's not act one, act two. It's
Yeah,
24 hours a day.
yeah, so true. Wow, this is great, powerful information. And I know we got more to come in the second segment of the show, and just some, valuable insight. If real quick, if you could sum up just some of the basic things that you shared for our listeners here in the first segment, just something real quick in 10, 15 seconds.
Well, I think establishing, in the first 90 days, what's the first symbolic action I'll take? How will I be visible in a meaningful way? What do I want my team to feel when they see me? And what story do I want to tell about my first 90 days? I think those are four key takeaways that people are listening that may want to think about that when they're ascending to a new role.
Wow, awesome. This is great. I know you guys have more to share here in the second segment of the show, everybody. We got to go to break, but when we come right back, we got more to come with sustainable success starts in the first 90 days. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Sustainable Success. If you're just joining us, we're talking about sustainable success starts in the first 90 days. In the first segment, we were outlining what are some of the common traits that leaders do to establish success in the first 90 days, among some other things that are very, very important. So we highly encourage those that are just joining us to come back and listen to this first segment in its entirety, or better yet, the entire all three segments of this show. If you're listening later here in the show, definitely listen in. There's a lot of valuable insights that you could pick up that you could apply, whether if you're just starting a business or you're an existing organization that is kind of retooling, revamping where you are and where you want to go. So, gentlemen, you guys shared a lot of great insights, and I would like to talk a little bit about culture. Culture is so important. It's going to either make or break you long term in terms of whatever your organization is, and it doesn't matter where I mean, well, it doesn't matter where you are, just knowing where you are and what can we do differently now to move forward in a better way, a way to either increase retention, get more out of our talent, people communicating at a higher level. But before we do so, let's talk. If you could share with us, what are some of the cultural missteps that can quietly derail even the most talented leaders? And if you could share that from your perspective.
Well, Chris, I think, trying to fix culture before they understand it, I think that's the key. And I've heard this line before where people say culture doesn't matter, but usually that's from somebody who's about to discover that culture is the only thing that's holding their strategy together
Mm.
right now, and they don't know it. And in healthcare, new CEOs rarely stumble because they lack that technical skills because they've got the job, but they stumble because they misread that culture. And that can be uh, don't not understanding existing culture. People forget culture is inherited. You can't come in and change it because it's something that's, it's like getting an inheritance from somebody. You say, I don't want that, or I want more or less, but you inherit it. So you have to understand it. And uh, also, I think it's understanding what the board wants in a hospital, what their culture is. And a lot of times the culture of the board, the culture of the hospital is different from the culture of the physicians. So each division of a hospital has different cultures. And I think it's important to understand
Oh,
that.
it's
And that,
so true. Would it be, just to interject there,
sure.
Kurt, would it be safe to say, like, now, if you have stakeholders in like a medical group, a hospital, use that. A lot of times they're going to be, I'm not saying all of them are, but majority of them are going to be task oriented result. They want results. It's about results. But then you dig down and you get down into the people that are caring for patients, the care level, depend upon the different departments. And they may be leading more from a place of being people centric. So it's people first, then results. And then at the other side, up the top, it could be results first, then people. So sometimes, like you said, there could be certain silos of that. What are some of the things you could share that can kind of, you're never going to get everybody on the same page 100%, but like where you can get people on a common ground, especially when you're dealing with different personality types in that case.
Well, uh, that's a real good question. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Uh, Culture is an invisible infrastructure. And it can, like I said, you could have different cultures. The doctors have a different culture. Excuse me, backing up a little bit, but I used to do a speech years ago. It was called Doctors Are from Mars, Administrators Are from Venus. And it was about the whole clash between how the different cultures, the hospitals have to operate on a financial basis. They
Yeah.
have to please their stakeholders, and the doctors are serving the patient public, which is a complete different a culture in itself. So again, um, not if you dismiss the culture too quickly, you lose credibility with the very people you need to lead. And I think that's very important. Um, and I think culture is a multiplier. If you misread it, it's not people say, what do you mean by that? Well, if you misread that, you could do 10 things right, but if it's multiplier of 10, one misstep in culture, it negates everything you've done correctly and the credibility you've established. So again, um, understanding that and poor culture that we've seen in our CEOs we've interviewed equates to higher turnover, uh, liability, patient dissatisfaction, which are different cultures, but all the image of the hospital is the culture that has to come together. And in your community, the image of your hospital is either, makes a success or contributes to its demise.
Yeah. On that subject, I mean, what can you share? Like, like what are some of the maybe the first steps of revamp? Well, it could either be revamping a culture or starting to turn a culture around that's going to, help people feel like they belong. In this case, also be able to get them engaged, raise retention, and get more production out of them. That's going to obviously lead to higher patient experience, better, feedback from patients, all those things that are important to any, I guess, to any medical group. So if you could share insights to that, I think it'd be quite valuable for this audience and how that relates to the industry that they may be in.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, Chris, but moving too fast. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
leaders come in like a bull in a china shop and try to restructure or overhaul, if you will, before they've listened. Another key factor is ignoring the sacred cows, and they're
Mm.
everywhere when you go into a new environment. And these are either programs, people's traditions that may not look efficient on paper, but carry deep symbolic weight with the people you're going to work and lead. And like I said, trying to fix culture earlier before you understand it. I think those three keys, um, I think, are inherent. Understanding that contributes to the success of the new CEO.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, depending upon the size of these groups, I mean, some are going to be, are very big and, depending upon, and some may not be, but so, but again, it's people and not everybody's going to be on the same page. Is there certain things that you find that are helpful? Because you have to be patient, like you talked about earlier. You can't just rush and expect things to be changed overnight or to be operating on a smooth basis in a short period of time. It takes time, and you have to measure to see what's working, what's not, and make adjustments along the way. Any other insights that you could share that could help, a leader now that might be struggling in that area that can get them to kind of make a shift on their end?
I think if you look at somebody that's been awarded a new position, I mean, competency got them in the door. They really did. But culture fit and chemistry is going to what's going to make them last. So understand the culture, like I said before, and understand the chemistry and their interaction. That's going to make them last. So people get in and they say, "Here I am. Um, I've had a track record at my previous facility for 20 years. I did this. I reduced length of stay. My leapfrog scores went through the roof, but what am I going to do here? And what's the culture here? And um, being transparent in that, being visible in that, walking the halls, not just staying in your office, open door policies. Those are all very important.
Yeah. On the open door policy, and I think that's important, this is a question I always like to ask leaders. Is it important to always be available or is it better to be valuable? And what I mean by that is like you're not just available where people can call you 24/7, but that when you set certain times to be available, you can be more valuable to them. So it's not like they're dependent on you for every little thing. Like you're creating autonomy, you're allowing them to step out of their comfort zone and grow in their roles. I always like to get insight to that and how that can be important, I guess, building a culture, a winning
Well,
culture.
I remember when I was young, I was very impatient, and I always asked my father for, you know, I wanted 24/7 access to him, and there was times when he said, "Listen, Kurt, I acknowledge that you need to talk to me, but I can't talk to you right now. But I can't afford, not can't afford. Excuse me, let me back up. I can't uh, address your concern in the time appropriate, but I will get back in and acknowledging that I wanted to visit with him, acknowledging the subject I wanted to talk to him
Yeah.
about, but at the same time getting back to me when he can spend the time and talk through what was going on, understand first what my issue was, and then answer it. So I think answer your question, being more valuable and available. I think that's
Yeah.
really sometimes you can't be on call 24/7, but to
Yeah.
let them know, I know you want to get a hold of me. I need to, let's set up a time we can both sit down. Can I have an idea what we're going to visit on so I can think about it before we sit down so I don't waste your time?
Yeah. So important. I think that is, and when you said that, Kurt, it also leads to, I guess, there's respect. Eventually, they always say there's rapport, then trust, and then respect. And when you can respect someone, doesn't mean you automatically have to like that person, but you respect them. And then when there's respect, there's it just seems like there's better communication in that way.
Sure.
I always find that they kind of go hand in hand, not always in every case, but going. So how important is generating that respect, not demanding it, but creating that culture where everybody can feel respected, where it's been earned, so to speak.
Well, I think respect just comes from, I'll go back to my original comment about being visible,
Mm,
that you're there for everybody, you listen for everybody. Um, and then you're with, you spend the time to get to know the people, before you
yep.
say, I want you to like me. I remember Patton one time when they were talking to General Patton, he said, he wasn't very popular with his troops, and he said, I don't want them to love me, I want them to fight for me. But they had his respect, and I think
Yeah.
I love that quote. It's from the movie, but he actually said that. I didn't want to repeat that without making sure
Oh,
but he
I can
said that.
relate to that. I'm a big football fan, and sometimes you get a coach and they may not say that hey, I'm not friends with my coach, but I respect him, and he's able to get a lot more production out of his players, no matter what skill level or level of talent. Versus if you're just buddy buddy with everyone, and then you're kind of allowing people to slip up, and you're not keeping them accountable or not allowing them to be accountable. Those are the things that don't lend itself to building an accountable or an interdependent work environment in this case.
Yeah,
So if people are operating, it becomes dependent, toxic, that type of thing.
I remember I had a college baseball coach, and he used to ride me a lot for a lot of things because I had a lot of areas to improve on. You always can improve, in baseball. But he told me one time, he said, start worrying when I don't ride you and I'm not paying
Mhm.
attention to you, because that's another way to, to gain respect by making sure that you're telling people what need to guide them, nudge them in the right direction, but you care about them. You wouldn't be telling them that in the future, wouldn't be trying to help.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that. Is there anything else that we didn't share that you could connect the dots for us about culture, because culture is long-term sustain, that's what's going to create that environment, that sustainability, to keep the right team intact, and the people communicating at a high level, engaged. And obviously those are the things that are going to lead to more critical thinking and seeing challenges for what it is, and see it as an opportunity to create those results. Any other insights that you could share that could help the leaders listening now that might all again be have a challenge in that area?
And I think I mentioned that the successful CEOs we've worked with uh, honor the culture they inherited. They learn it and they find ways to shape it slowly. And earning that right to make the changes, they show respect first, and that's how they really gain that culture trust, if you will.
Love that in this case. One of the things I wanted to as we round out this segment, I'm always been a big fan of not just meetings, like you don't have a meeting to have a meeting, but I like the term, I always use a term called huddle, just like in football, but it's not a 30-second huddle, but a huddle that we can make sure that each of the people in that culture, or even the team, that whatever team it is in that culture, that if we're going to be on the same page, we have to make sure that we understand, even for today, what our role and duties are for whatever challenge that we're looking to make better, or what we're trying to accomplish today. How important it would you see that, whether if it's just a meeting, a short meeting, a recap, or I call it a huddle, why that would be important, especially in
Well,
healthcare too, with the healthcare.
many of the CEOs that Neill and I have interviewed have daily huddles. That's just, it was called either the huddle up or the daily huddle. And that just set the tone for the day. It didn't have to be long, but it was held at the same time every morning, so people
Yeah.
had to prepare for it. They knew, that if they're going to have to answer a certain question, they were preparing for it, and it showed respect. And the people that showed up late were included in the huddle, so they were showing both ways. But those everyday communications, I think, are very important. They don't have to be long, but just 5 minutes. Here's what we're
Ah,
going to do. Here's what we're going to do today. And then, here's something that got thrown to us out of the blue because, a hospital day is 24 hours a day, as we all know. So something happened in the middle of the night we have to deal with today, but then everybody knows what we're going to deal with. We're all on the same page and we all are trying to achieve the same goals, and how are we going to get there and what do we need to do today to accomplish those goals?
yeah. Yeah, it's so important. And it also keeps the communication operating at a higher level, because that, now everybody has a sense of where each other, what you're doing in your role to move things forward. It's just like again on a football team. The football teams that communicate more effectively, despite just the talent itself, are the ones that usually win more games and get to the postseason.
Well,
Those.
and I think the daily huddles are informal, and I think people are more honest, more genuine, less disingenuous, if you will, if they're in an informal setting.
Yeah, yeah, love that. I love this talk here on culture and so on. How important is, I guess that we can round off this segment here, the importance of establishing resources. Because again, remember you had mentioned that you can't always be available 24/7. So where people can call you anytime when they, but utilizing resources that can now people can now go to, and they don't have to just depend upon one person or a few people to always get every little question they have answered. They can go to a resource and have that addressed.
Well, I think it's people in your support group, they have to understand your vision. So if you're not available, they can go to them, or somebody's trying to get a hold of you, let your number, whether it's not a subordinate but a peer that knows where you're at all the time, knows what your thoughts are. So if they can't get a hold of you, they can say, yes, I talked to him this morning about that, him or her about that, and uh, this is what the vision is on that right now. So again, with I know one CEO that said they can't get a hold of me at certain times, so he had the walkie-talkie put into his cell phone. And you talk about AI, and now we have AI walkie-talkies, so he can get real time. I'm over on the fourth floor, and this is happening. So without even having to pick up the phone and call, they could text back. So there's AI in our current situation, getting hold of people are helping us be more. They're not
Absolutely.
replacing people, just happens to be more effective. And
Yeah.
in health,
Complementary tool.
Chris, in healthcare, everybody's saying we have to do more with
Yep.
less, but since we're getting graded on it, now we have
Yep.
to do better with less. And these AI tools and all that help
Yeah.
contribute to that success. So
Absolutely. I know we got to go to break. This is wonderful stuff. We got more to come here with Kurt Mosley and Neill Marshall. We got to go to break, everybody. When we come right back, we got more to come with sustainable success starts in the first 90 days. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sustainable Success. We are talking today about sustainable success starts in the first 90 days. Again, if you are just joining us, we highly encourage you to listen to the show in its entirety here later today on the Lisbon platform. Again, we've been here now since January of 2025. And again, you can listen to any of the shows that we've had on this platform, as well as our old platform going back over now 8.5 years. Yes, we're approaching our 500th episode here of Sustainable Success. And again, it's because of you, the listener, that we are committed to delivering quality value from the subject matter experts that we bring in each and every week. Our show, again, is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct, a social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. They now feature from athletes to entrepreneurs section. These are for professional athletes now that are transitioning into everyday life. Perhaps you're retiring from your sport, and now you might be looking to start a new career, maybe get a job or start a business, a franchise. Well, guess what? You don't have to do it alone. You can form groups with others that are doing the same to make that process more seamless. There's also a podcast every week that the CEO and co-founder of Alumni Direct, Rob Finkelstein, hosts every week, talking to professional athletes that have actually made those transitions. That offers a lot of great weekly content that can help you if you are a professional athlete looking to meet others to make this process more seamless. If you'd like some more information about that, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Guys, I want to just such valuable information that you've shared on this topic. I think it would be fitting, if you could share from, your experience, the interviews you've done with over 10,000 plus leaders, any stories. You don't have to name any particular companies or individuals if you want to keep it confidential, but anything that you could share that can really connect the dots with the valuable insights that you shared with us here today.
Sure. I've got several, and because we publish them, we can use their names and
All
say,
right.
um, and there's a variety of things because we ask people, tell us tactics that you used in the first 90 days that moved the needle. One of them, Jay Robinson, runs a a couple of hospitals for Kaiser up in Northern California, and he said, when I come in, I meet with my whole management team, 250 people separately, each one. Everybody does that. Okay, I got that. But here's what he does that's a little bit different. He asks them, if we are successful in our first 90 days together, what has changed?
Mm.
And then he takes all of that and sees if there's themes running through that. What are some things that I can do as a leader and get quick wins? Um, so that's one. Another one. So I'm a guy that likes like the big, right? I'm uh, I'm looking for the one thing that's going to make the holy grail, right? So I talked to Shane Cerrone. Shane Cerrone ran Oakwood Beaumont Hospital up in Detroit, one of the finest hospitals in the country. And he said, Neill, he said, it is not one big thing. He said, it's 100 small things. And so
Mm.
what you have to do is you have to go and there's not one thing that's going to take you from 0 to 60. But if you do 60 things, they're each going to take you to
Yeah.
60.
I love that. Can you guys expand, either Neil, Kurt, on that? I'm a big advocate of that, those small wins that we often take for granted, and that consistency with those small wins, how they snowball and add up to a big win.
Yeah. So what Shane would do is move that out throughout the organization so that his people, even at the front line, knew that if they could make a change, if it was cheap and it was easy to undo. If it's cheap to do and easy to undo, you can make that change. You don't have to go all the way up and down the line trying to get permission.
So it's
Um,
saving time. There's autonomy there. I mean, you can make a decision very quickly, and you're not going to, it cause a bottleneck now because you got to wait a week before somebody gets back to you.
or months or whatever,
Or
as
months,
long
yeah.
as it's easy to undo. meaning that if it's not the right thing, you can undo it very easily.
Got it.
You know, and I think another one that really stuck to me in our interviews, Derek Ziegler. He wore the uniform. He was a former Army officer, and he was healthcare executive, and he visited each department in his hospital in the first 90 days, and he shadowed them. You know, everything. You know, from frontline employees to scrubbing floors along with them, and he wore their uniform. Like if he showed up with the environmental people, he wore the environmental uniform and helped clean that floor that day. So he said, he basically said, I see you, I respect what you do, I'll earn your trust and not ask for it. So, I mean, I think that was one of the key things. I mean, seeing him walk around in a pair of cafeteria scrubs was quite unique. So, I mean, he basically, and he gained fame for that. I think that was one of they trusted him because he created this trust for these range of initiatives, from process improvement to wellness programs that he saw when he was shadowing these people in their jobs. Gave them suggestions how to improve it, how they could make it better, how they can make their jobs better and their lives better.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And maybe if there's any stories you could share, like, as leaders, we talked about adapting, we talked about communication, and sometimes I guess we got to be open for, changes or pivots. I wouldn't, well, maybe not pivots, but maybe, but sometimes where maybe we don't agree with it. Like our first perspective is I would never make that decision if I, again, coming from me. Yet other people we're working with are on board to do something that we disagree with. What is it? Is there situations where we have to make sometimes decision what is best for the situation, even though we may disagree with it personally? If there's any insights that you've shared that where that can, help, move over an obstacle or through an obstacle to get to a result.
Well, I think a lot of times, making those changes, and you said I would make that change, but change is inevitable. Again,
Mm.
we have to move forward, but I think making a decision on whether to change or not without even trying it first is very important. Say, listen, I don't, with your people that are involved in that change, say, I don't know if it's going to work either, but I think we have to make a change one way or another, and we're going to do this together, and welcome your feedback if you don't think it's going to work. First week it doesn't work, we'll drop back 10 and punt. So we'll try something new, but don't be afraid to make change in that time, especially if it's something, hospitals have to make,
Yeah, absolutely.
life-changing moments every day. So I think those are key for not to be afraid to make that move. But like I said earlier, be quick, but don't hurry. Understand the situation. So.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that. And I always find that when you guys share these stories, these actual real life stories, not only are they inspiring, but they give you valuable insights to, maybe situations that somebody else is experiencing. It may not be the same situation, but it's similar. And perhaps that, again, a lot of things that were done in that situation could be transferable to this situation. Do you find that that's highly valuable when people have access to that information, that, it also helps them to navigate that change a lot better?
Well, I think when I talked about Derek Ziegler earlier, the one that wore the uniform, I mean,
Yeah.
he said, I learned how the hospital ran, and I'm the CEO. But we got down to the nitty gritty, and it's just like, I remember I watched this movie Formula One the other night where the basic driver was trying to tell the engineer how the car was performing, and he said, I had to take a step back. And he said, this is what I'm experiencing, but I need to know what you're experiencing. I don't want to tell you
Yeah.
what to do. I'm not the engineer. But he said, I learned more about the car by asking that because I'm not an engineer. So I think
Yeah.
that's a key point.
Oh, it's Kate. It reminds me of that, excuse me, that show. I forgot the name of it, but where and I was never a big fan of reality TV shows, but I guess the CEO that goes undercover in his own
Un-
company, and yeah, you
Undercover
know,
CEO.
yeah, to kind of find out what's going on at these levels that, and a lot of times CEOs have no clue, and to pick up what's going on and so on. And yeah, that's what it reminded me when you said that, Kurt. It's so important. And
But the interesting thing with Derek though was that he would make an appointment and he was
yeah,
going to go with a an environmental services worker. When he showed up, he wore their uniform. The environmental services worker would not want him to do the work. And he would say, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm here to do your work. You're here to teach me how to do it." And he would clean the toilet while they were like saying, "Don't, no, don't do." And he would clean the toilet. He would, and he'd be like, you help, but I'm doing your job today. You are going to teach me to do your job."
wow. And that, to me, when somebody at that level, a CEO, you make yourself relatable, because a lot of times people feel like, especially in a big organization, that that CEO is untouchable, can't approach them. They're afraid to afraid to act a certain way or be themselves or say something. But when you can be relatable, you can feel comfortable if you have a question, if you don't understand something, and feel like you're not going to be viewed as incompetent, or you don't know what you're doing, and so on. And I find that what you guys shared, that going back to what you shared in the second segment on culture, that builds that psychologically safe work environment where, again, people feel like, I don't have to know everything, but I have to be open to what, if I don't understand something, I know I can tap into resources, or talk to someone when they are available to be valuable, to get that information. That's what I got from what you guys shared. And I think that's so important. Yeah. As we get towards the end of the show, we're about 4 minutes to the end of the show. I want to use these next 2 minutes. If there is anything that you guys would like to share to kind of sum up everything that you talked about here today, just to kind of think about, if you were to like just sum everything up, to leave the audience with, taking action with one thing. We can't possibly make all these changes at the same time, but just, again, giving them a reason for, take one thing that they can start to make a shift in where they're at to move forward.
Well, I think key takeaway I got from a lot of our CEOs was in that first 90 days, you have to demonstrate these, your leadership qualities, but uh, it's not to prove competence during that time, but it's to identify and change the behaviors that's going to limit you. And my dad used to say this a lot, but he said the biggest obstacle to change is not ignorance, it's your self-awareness. These CEOs have to be self-aware from day one. They're on stage, as I said, people are watching them, but be aware of your own egos, your own preconceived notions. It's going to limit you when you're transitioning to this new role.
Oh, wow, it's so powerful. I love the fact that you said, self-awareness, because self-awareness is the key to, again, to adapt, or to be open to change, because like you said earlier, change is going to happen with or without you regardless. And why spend the energy fighting the change that you can't control anyway, right? You might as well adapt to what you can control, and that's always you yourself, and being the example and being a resource to inspire others to do for themselves in their role and duties. This has been great information, guys. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us here today. I want to thank you not only personally, but for the rest of the team here at Sustainable Success, on our platform here. To, again, say thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
Yes. And I
Had a
want to
great
leave the rest of, this minute and a half here. If you can, let the audience know, what would be, if anything you'd like to share with them, anything you'd like to offer them, and how to get in contact with you with the valuable insights that you shared with us today.
Well, yeah, I'll just say that if you're a healthcare executive and you want to advance your career or you want to add standout leaders to your team, right? You can come to our website, healthsearchpartners.com, or come see us on LinkedIn. Um, Also, we've got a new series that's coming out. And for most of your audience, it's probably not going to be that great. And it's about what we call search committee interviews. In the not-for-profit arena, a lot of times when you do a CEO interview, you come in and interview with the whole search committee at one time. So it's like a 2-hour presentation. But we've got a whole series on how to kind of ace the search committee interview. And then we are working on a series on mentors. Because mentors, we're wondering, our question is, do you need a mentor now that we have YouTube and Chat GPT?
I always still think, from my personal experience, I've always found mentors highly valuable.
Well, I will tell you, Chris, that's what we're going to find out. That's what we're
Oh
going to
yeah,
end up finding out. But the kids today think
yeah.
that that YouTube and
You
Chat
could get it all in
GPT.
Chat GBT, but yeah, I can tell
Exactly.
you, oh my God, where I am today, I wouldn't have been possible without great mentors. And granted, we didn't have the technology like we do today, but nonetheless, I see AI as a valuable tool, but not something we depend on 100%. It's
Well,
something I do every day.
I had one mentor say, you know what? Chat GPT is not going to hire you, but I
Exactly.
might.
There you go. Absolutely. Wow. Any other final comments do you like to share in the next 20 seconds before we conclude our show here today?
Sure. Chris, we created that 90-day leadership series to spotlight all these bold decisions, these actions these CEOs take early on, uh, but not just to start strong, I think, but to build lasting impact. Because in healthcare leadership, first 90 days aren't just the beginning. They're the foundation and blueprint for long-term success. So hope everybody enjoyed the show today. We enjoyed visiting with you and sharing our insights. And really, I always feel like I'm speaking for the CEOs that we interviewed, and they've been invaluable in giving their tips to us. And we're just so grateful they let us talk about their success and be able to share it with others.
Well, I want to thank both of you again. Just valuable insights, and we will definitely welcome you back on another future show where we could talk round two with what you shared here or any other topic that you'd like to share with us. Thank you again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Sustainable Success. We are committed each and every week in bringing subject matter experts in, like Neill and Kurt, that will help gain insights to how you could take your personal and business success to the next level. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week. And again, happy holidays to you right around the corner. And just to let everybody know, we will pick up our show again back on January 8th. So we're going to be off because our show happens to be on Christmas and New Year's. So we don't want you to take time away from the family just to listen to the show then. So we'll be coming back on January 8th. So until then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next year for 2026 at the same time. Take care.